Hi, I am Josephina Lauer, founder of Temple of Aloha and creatrix of this podcast called Universal Intimacy. On Universal Intimacy, I will be exploring the intersectionality between science, spirituality, and sexuality. These are three fields that are often held to be diabolically opposed in our society and our culture. And as a somatic intimacy coach, tantric practitioner, and embodiment guide, I firmly believe and assert that the ultimate form of healing for our species and this planet will come when we stop seeing what separates us and we start feeling into that which connects us. When we are connected in these fields of somatics, shamanism, sexuality, spirituality, and science, we will evolve as a species and as individuals. I am super excited this season on Universal Intimacy, my premiere and launch season, to share with you renowned experts in a variety of fields, as well as my esteemed colleagues and guests, to share their perspectives on universal intimacy. Again, from their own personal and professional expertise, we'll be meeting with somatic practitioners, regenerative farmers, psychoanalysts and psychologists. We'll be meeting with experts in fields such as immersive ritual-based arts and psychotherapy, as well as sex workers and tantric practitioners. I really am juiced up and excited to share what I believe in so passionately, so profoundly, so intimately. And I'm just really excited to get intimate with all of you. Now, on this first episode, I really want to explain what I mean by universal intimacy. I want to share with you a little bit about my personal background and why I decided to go into this field and not only study this field, but also start to share what I have learned with my clients, my patrons, my friends, and all those who are in my field. I'm also going to share with you the meaning behind sacred sexuality, what it means to be sacred, because again, often as humans, we will separate or compartmentalize our lives, and we tend to create judgment that way, right? All too often, when we think about our spiritual belief systems, whether we were raised religious or whether we were raised in certain belief systems politically via our families and caretakers, we carry with us throughout our lives belief systems, projections, distortions, programming that then impacts us as we make our way throughout this human experience. And it may be contracting us or limiting our soul's expression. So we're really going to dive into our soul, not only on this episode, but throughout the totality of universal intimacy. And so I'm really calling in listeners who are lifelong learners, who are those that identify as being on a soul journey, identify as seekers, and those who are just really curious about learning about new ways to expand their belief systems to truly live a life that they love. All right, let's start with a little bit more about me, who I am, why I'm here, why I feel so called to share my wisdom and knowledge with you. All right. So my name is Josephine Lauer. That is my born name, really honoring my parents, both beautiful individuals who raised me in Wisconsin in a Catholic household. And so I received a lot of that programming growing up of the good girl tendencies, right? Of I studied hard, I played sports, I did well in school, I did everything my parents asked of me. And I felt like doing that was what was going to bring me success in life. You could say I was a people pleaser. And I think a lot of humans can resonate with this, whether you were raised according to a religious dogma or belief system, or whether you just were surviving from that programming that I have to do good, so that people like me. I think all of us are really driven to seek approval from not only our parents, but from society at large. And so throughout our lives, we can take on different identities. We can showcase different aspects of our personality in order to achieve success or to be well liked or to get that boyfriend or girlfriend, right? And for me, you know, this showed up in a variety of ways throughout my journey, whether it was career paths, relationships. So I did really well in school. I went to Dartmouth, and at Dartmouth, I thought I was going to go to law school. So I studied government and I was pre-law, but I also took some courses in Italian. I studied the language Italian, and through the Italian studies program, I actually went abroad and I lived in Italy for a semester. And while I was in Italy, I'm closing my eyes because I'm dropping into this sensorial awareness of this lived experience in Italy of la dolce vita. I don't know if any of you resonate with this, but in Italy, you know, they are very connected to source. They're very connected to the land, to living off of the land, to eating from the land, to experiencing the totality of what it means to be human through celebrations as well, like gathering together as family members to eat meals, to celebrate weddings, funerals, birthdays, all of these things, right? And I grew up my mom's side is Italian, so I grew up a little bit in an Italian-American family, but I also grew up in that sort of classic American family where we didn't associate a lot with a lot of our relatives all the time. It was rare, right? And so I didn't have that sense of that deep community connection, that deep connection to the village, or if we look at archaic times, that tribal mentality of feeling like I belong here and I live amongst a community of people who love me and care for me. And I truly think that most of Americans are suffering because we lack that, right? We may identify with our family, but we don't have that sense of like tribal unity or community. So I'll get back to that point a little bit later. So while I'm in Italy and I'm studying this culture and falling in love with the land and a beautiful man by the name of Adamo, I really deviated in my path at academia from being pre-law to minoring in the classics. Now, for those that don't know, in liberal arts education, the classics focus on Greco-Roman archaeology, history, architecture, culture, civilization. And what I didn't know at the time and what I know now in identifying as a priestess is that this was part of my initiation onto the priestess path, right? I studied Latin in high school, and then I went to Italy and I was studying in Italy, and I went to Greece after graduation and did this archaeological dig where I was actually in the temples, right? And I felt this awakening within my body. Sometimes I'll refer to the body as the sacred body temple, but I felt this awakening within my body, this feeling of like, I have been here before. I feel like many humans and listeners can resonate with this feeling. Sometimes we call it deja vu, but really it's this relationship that we have with our soul to this recognition of there's something beyond me and how I identify in this timeline, right? There's something beyond who I was born as and the family I'm in and the experience I've had in my X number of years revolving around this sun, right? I actually probably existed in a past life. And so this was the kind of feeling that I felt when I was in Italy and Greece. It was like, I've been here before. My soul knows this place. So I'm just going to pin that because I'm going to go into the priestess path a little bit later. So again, I'm in Italy. I decide to minor in the classics. So I deviate kind of from this field of studying law and thinking that I'm going to go to law school, and I graduate, and then I'm still following this path of the good girl, right? So I get a job with PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, this sort of classic corporate position. I was like, yes, I'm set for life. I'm going to be a management consultant for my whole life, right? I actually envisioned myself as being like this boss babe in a boardroom as like a mom and getting like the call from school and then being like, your kid is sick. And I'd be like, I can't right now. I have like $1 million deal. Let the nanny handle it. Like I literally envisioned that being my life. All my friends were going on working for Lehman Brothers and JP Morgan and McKinsey and Goldman Sachs, right? And so I'm just giving you this framework of understanding of who I am, because I also feel as though, yeah, there's just so much in the totality of my own timeline that doesn't get fully expressed. And I want to give you this framework for understanding my approach to this work, because it's actually very unique. Some of you may be here because you follow me on Instagram. You know me from the field of Tantra and sacred sexuality. And there may be some projections and distortions that come into that space, right? You may be like, oh, this is an intimacy coach. This is a woman who just loves to have sex. I love to have sex. The truth is, though, is that I'm coming at this from a very academic and sacred lens. And so this is what I'm hoping to convey to you throughout the course of this podcast, not only from myself and my own individual expression, but from the guests that I bring on. All right, back to my story. So I break up with the Italian man, my fidanzato, and I meet a beautiful man from Maine. We get married. We have 3 beautiful children together. I am fortunate enough at this time in my life, I also went, I left PwC. I went to culinary school. So this is another piece of the thread of my timeline that I want to just pin for you as listeners, because I'm going to be bringing on chefs. I'm going to be bringing on regenerative farmers. I'm going to be bringing on people that are devoted to local food systems and food systems change, because this is another huge passion of mine. I saw 20 years ago that humanity was disconnected from source. When I say source, I'm referring to planet Earth. I'm referring to Mama Gaia. Humanity is disconnected from source, and this, I believe and assert, is the cause of all ailments. When we learn how to return to her with a capital H, we will bring about so much more harmony within our own bodies, within the ecosystem, and within our communities. And so this devotion to source, this devotion to planet Earth, which was really seeded by my mother and gardening and my agrarian history, all my ancestors were farmers. This is really important to me, and this is a huge concept of what universal intimacy is about, is the totality of beingness with this earth. So this connection to source came through me very strong in the early 2000s, and I went to culinary school. And I was fortunate to go to culinary school at a time when this nation of America was really becoming attuned to the farm-to-table food movement. Right? This became a big movement. It still currently is. And it's interesting because everywhere you go across the world, of course, they're going to eat what's in season, what's the freshest, what the farmers are recommending. And so in a way, it's very humorous to me that it took America centuries to figure this out, what is innate to understanding what's in our human design and makeup, that we're meant to be eating what's locally grown, what's in season and available, right? We want the freshest food possible. So this came through me very strong in the early 2000s, and I had the fortune of working with a James Beard nominated chef and supporting him on his growth trajectory and being a part of this big boom within Chicagoland known as farm to table, known as molecular gastronomy, all of these fields. So I deeply connect with chefs and chefies, and you'll probably be seeing some chefs here on the podcast because many humans are able to connect to source through food. So I was working in hospitality I met a man, we got married, we had children, and I also started then working for a nonprofit with a chef by the name of Greg Christian, who I will be bringing on as a guest to this podcast. We started a nonprofit known as the Organic School Project. And then I stopped working to have my children. And I had the fortune of being able to stay home with my children for 10 years. So I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. And I'm slowing down here because part of my work in this journey of divine feminine embodiment is really anchored in being a mother. And this is something I hope to get across to you throughout this season on the podcast, is that being a mother is the most important role in my life, and caring for my 3 beautiful sons throughout that time frame of my life brought me so much fulfillment. And I really honor any and all women who birth children and whatever choice you make, right? I honor those that are single moms. I honor those that go back to work right away. I just knew for me that I had to be all in. I had to be 100%. And again, I was fortunate enough that my children's father was able to support our family, and I was able to stay home and be with my children full time and do attachment parenting. And I breastfed all my kids till they were 3. And it was in this time period of my life where I also was connected to divine feminine embodiment and priestess work. So I'm going to talk about that now. So I had the fortune of having a doula. Hopefully I will have her on the podcast as well, Peyton Callahan. And she, as well as a woman by the name of Julie Hobart, introduced me to the red tent. And the red tent ceremonies are these spaces and places for women to gather. So for those that aren't aware, a red tent ceremony is derivative of the indigenous tribal communities, where when women were bleeding, when women were menstruating, they were put into a special tent, a special area within the tribe. Now, this was not to cast them out. This was not to make them feel as though there was something wrong happening to their bodies because they were bleeding. This was actually because in these cultures, they understood the sacredness of this time. They understood that during this time, the veil was very thin. What that means is that women, when we are bleeding, we have the capacity to connect with the spiritual realms. The veil is thin, meaning that we have the capacity to commune with spirits and receive these downloads from the divine. And you can also, women, or for anyone that understands the menstrual cycle, understand what's happening is the uterine lining is very thin. Also, it's shedding, right? So there's a lot of sensitivity. There's a lot of inwardness. A woman goes inward during this time. And so during these times when women were on their moon cycle, they would all gather together in one specific tent within the tribe. And so it was this beautiful opportunity for women to connect, to share stories, to weep together, to grieve together, to laugh together, to sing together, right? They would sing songs and tell stories and read poetry, and they would dance, and it was just so lovely. And we as a society obviously have forgotten that, but there are those of us that have remembered and have brought that back. And so I highly invite you to Google red tent ceremonies near me if you identify as being a woman or femme-bodied or with a womb and a vulva. Highly, highly encourage you to check out red tent ceremonies. So I was involved in these red tent ceremonies, and also beautiful opportunity to curate art, spoken word, poetry, love art. My mom's an artist. And in these red tent ceremonies, what I was really attuned to was this divine feminine embodiment. And when I'm referring to that, I'm referring to all the archetypal resonances of the feminine. So very often in our society, we're looking at a woman and we're seeing her as, okay, you're a mother, you're a sister, you're my colleague. Or maybe you're looking at a woman and you're saying, oh, you're super sexy, you're a woman I want to have sex with. And we're kind of compartmentalize women into very specific categories. But when we're looking at the totality of what a woman is, we're looking at all the archetypes of the divine feminine. And so this is really what the priestess path is about. And I want to honor my guide, Eden Amadora of 13 Moon Mystery School, who ushered me into the priestess path, as well as Juliana Munthu. So many guides I'll be honoring and communing with here on this podcast, because this full archetypal resonance of the feminine is recognizing that at any given moment, a woman could be representing the wise woman, the crone, the grandmother. She could be the maiden, the little girl. She could be the wild woman. She could be the sacred slut. She could be in her priestess. She could be in her oracle. She could be in her sister. She could be in her mother archetype, right? She could be in her inner shamana or shamanika, channeling the divine. So as women, we're really embodying, and we call this the 13 moons, because there are 13 cycles to the moon and there are 13 cycles to the feminine. We in the Gregorian calendar believe there are 12 months, but in the divine feminine world, there are 13 months. More on that later. All right. So in this journey of really understanding the complexities of who I was while I was caring for my children, while I was identifying as mother and wife. And again, this is not to create this story that I was unhappy. I really want to communicate this to everyone. I have and had a very loving husband and partner in my life as a father to my children and a devotional man. Honestly, he is the most sacred masculine in my life other than my own father, right? The way that he showed up for me and the way that he continues to show up for our children is really, really commendable. And so I really want that to be understood in and throughout this podcast, because I'm not that classic story when I talk about divorce of like, he was bad or I am a victim. I'm actually a story of a woman who felt an inner calling, who felt this inner tug of there's something more for me beyond being identified as solely mother and wife. And I think a lot of women can resonate with this. And again, this is why I really honor my sisters who are career women, who are bosses and executives, who are doing all the things, because it's hard, mamas, right? It's really hard to be a devoted mother and also be devoted to your personal practice and be devoted to your business, the nonprofit where you volunteer at, whatever it is. So really, really honoring female-bodied individuals who also choose to be mothers in this timeline. And that really led me onto this path of divine feminine embodiment, because as my marriage was unraveling in 2018, I felt this awakening within my body of what I now know is sacred life force energy, which is Kundalini Ma, which is this feeling of, yes, arousal, excitement, turn on. This is sacred life force energy, comes from the sacral. It comes from the second chakra, and it can be very disorienting, right? It can lead us astray. It can cause us to have an affair. It can cause us to feel totally pulled by this undercurrent of the Kundalini Ma energy, which is very chaotic, right? And again, I also want to share in my personal story that, a lot of people see the unraveling of my marriage and they can label it as a certain way. And what I want to share is it can also be very psychologically disturbing. So my journey into embodiment and these fields of sacred sexuality and tantra actually stems from my relationship to my mental health. So I want to speak a little bit about mental health, because I think so many humans identify as being anxious, as maybe having paranoias, maybe feeling into panic attacks, right? And I want to be bold today, and I want to normalize that. I want to say that it is normal to be human, to be a soul fused with physical form, finite matter of the body, to be here now, having a human experience. And it is completely normal to have anxiety, to feel anxious, to have panic attacks. We have created a culture and a society that is putting a lot of pressure on our souls and on our emotional, mental, and physical bodies. And so as I was going into this field of mental health and trying to understand why I was having this psychological breakdown, I started to get into spirituality to understand that I was actually having a breakthrough, right? My soul was coming online, and my soul's expression is filled with so much sacred life force energy and vibrancy. And I just had to learn how to channel that, right? Like, it can be very disorienting and destabilizing, and you can even judge it and be like, what the fuck is that? Ah! Until you learn how to hone it. Until you learn how to utilize that as power. This is your power center, right? And so studying Tantra and the Tao and the fields of sacred sexuality really have helped me crystallize my medicine and my magic to be able to distill it and serve it to those who need it, to those who feel attracted to it, to those who feel lit up by it, to those who need a little activation. So going back a little bit. So I'm having this breakthrough, right? This mental breakdown, this soul breakthrough. And I was fortunate enough to have spent some time on the island of Kauai. I was on Kauai in 2018, 2019, and 2020 for my other work as a food systems consultant with Beyond Green Partners. And while I was there, I did ecstatic dance twice a week. So ecstatic dance, for those that don't know what it is a really beautiful opportunity to drop into your body, to get out of your mind, and to experience these states of ecstasy and bliss simply by your own breath, your own movements, right? The purpose of dancing ecstatically is not to connect with other individuals. It's to really have your own inner experience. That's why there's no talking during ecstatic dance. And to understand that, like, we can actually get high on our own supply, right? I literally felt high one day after doing ecstatic dance. I literally felt this like high that I really only experienced during sex and maybe a little bit with cannabis. But yeah, as far as talking about substances and highs, that's definitely going to be for other episodes where we explore the intersectionality of psychedelics and spirituality. Definitely happening on this podcast. But yeah, that you can actually feel that sense of a high. You can actually feel ecstasy and bliss simply by breathing, simply by moving your body. And I had the fortune of discovering this on the island of Kauai, the grandmother island, super divine feminine energy surrounded by goddesses. I like to say that when my marriage was unraveling, I prayed to God and God showed me the goddess. And what I mean by that is literally and figuratively and metaphorically, but literally I'm at ecstatic dance with these women who are just dancing, you know, with abandonment, and they're super sensual and sexy, and they're not dancing to seek validation or connection with the masculine. They are dancing for themselves. And again, being from the Midwest, raised a Catholic girl, I was like, whoa, what is this? I want this. Whatever this is, I want it. And I labeled it goddess energy. And I didn't know at the time, I didn't realize until actually 2 years later that I literally was with goddesses. I literally was dancing with priestesses, Ashela, Shona, these women who were on the priestess path, who were into embodiment practices and facilitating guided embodiment journeys. And again, to me at the time, they were just other women, right? But they really awakened within me this awareness and attunement to my own body as being sacred, and that I could dance for myself and have these peak states of feeling ecstasy just by dancing with myself. So that really seeded in me, again, this understanding of how powerful my body was, but also this deep curiosity to learn more. Again, I was like, what is this? I want more of this. Okay. Like, I want to be hanging out with these types of women. And I remember, you know how we make like the Pinterest board, right? Of like, okay, like make a Pinterest board for your life. Like, I took screenshots of these women. I started following them all on Instagram, and I was taking screenshots screenshots of like, oh my God, I want to be with these women dancing. I want to be with these women swimming naked in the ocean. And there was this photo shoot of some of these women like naked by the ocean. And again, I say naked, and this is funny. This is coming up at this moment because not because I was turned on by them, not because I'm a lesbian, not because I want to like hang out with women and make out with them and eat their pussies, but because when we are with other women and we feel so safe that we can strip down and get naked and be in this pure innocence, this frequency of innocence, it is so fucking magical where we are just like, I love you, sister. I love you so much. And I see you fully and you are so beautiful. And we can be naked together and touching each other and kissing each other. And it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that we have to be in a relationship. It doesn't mean that suddenly you're expecting something from me and I'm expecting something from you and I'm taking and I'm allowing. It's like, it's honestly one of the most beautiful feelings within sisterhood. And again, I also want to share with everyone when I'm on these women's retreats, please don't think that we're all getting together and eating each other's pussies. Like that is not what is happening at all. We're usually getting together and crying and screaming and sharing our trauma. All right. More on that later. All right. So when I'm circling these images or screenshotting them and I'm just like, oh my God, I just want more of this goddess energy. I was calling this in, right? And then I literally got this message on Instagram from my guide, Allie McPhee, also known as Numana, her priestess name Numana of Modern Goddess Lifestyle. And she said, hey, Josephina, we are having this sensual sovereignty leadership retreat and a spot just opened up and we would love for you to have it. And it was with her and Chelsea Johansson. And I literally responded like Oprah had just walked in the room and given me a new car. I was like, oh my God. I was like, yes. It was such a full body fuck yes that I was like, I have to be there. And this was in January 2021 where like we were still on lockdown for COVID and it was really hard to get into the islands of like Hawaii. This retreat was on Kauai. But again, I had been on Kauai 2 years earlier. So I was like, okay, I can make this happen. And I made it happen. And when I showed up to this retreat, my loves, I was there with all these other coaches. All these other women had been doing this work as embodiment guides and coaches for a while. And I was just like there, like green, right? And what was so epic was I remember Chelsea Johansson saying to me like, you are an embodiment guide. And I was like, yes, claiming this, owning this. Yes, I am. And I said, I think I'm here to work with the masculine. And she said, drop, I think. And I said, yes. And I am here to work with the masculine. Yes. Own it. Claim it. Yes. So that was my beginning as a sacred somatic intimacy coach. I was initiated via the priestess path. Following that, I dove really deep again into my priestess studies, studying with Eden Amadora and the 13 Moon Mystery School, as well as discovering that being with women wasn't enough for me. I went to so many retreats and immersive experiences and women's circles and these red tent ceremonies. And I was like, where are the spaces where we can be raw and authentic with men? I truly felt that the healing was going to come from when we could gather together in community, regardless of gender, and share our personal experiences and share and express our trauma. And so I sought out these co-ed spaces and places. I said, where can we have sacred rage rituals with the masculine? Where can we do yoni gazing with the masculine? And someone was like, ISTA. So ISTA stands for the International School of Temple Arts. It is an international mystery school. It doesn't focus exclusively on Tantra. It focuses on sacred sexuality via shamanism. And that was really my entry point into sacred sexuality. And why I feel so strongly about sacred sexuality as a healing modality and within the field of spirituality is because there are so many fields and sectors of our life related to healing modalities, related to up-leveling, related to empowerment, related to embodiment, related to somatics, related to coaching, where they'll talk about everything in your life, everything in your past lives, but they won't talk about sex and your genitals. That is what gets left off the table. That's like, oh no, that's not appropriate here. Even in medicine ceremonies, right? It's like, oh, you can scream and you can cry, but you can't have an orgasm. That's not acceptable here. So I believe firmly that the healing is going to come when we can truly stand in front of each other and say, I see you, brother. I see you, sister. I see the totality of who you are without judgment. All of you. With your genitals, with your sacred life force energy, your turn on, your eros, your kink. So much of what we keep buried deep down within ourselves, that is what results in mental health, physical health, emotional health issues, is this unexpressed emotion, is this unexpressed feeling related to our sexual energy, because it has been cloaked in shame, guilt, and fear. And so now I'm going to get into the field of somatics. All right, so somatics. It comes from the Greek word soma, S-O-M-A. Going back to the pin of when I studied in Greece, in the temples, Greek, somatics. Wow, I know Greek. Yes. All right. So the field of somatics, how I like to identify it and define it for you, is understanding the intersectionality of our physical body, our mental body, and our emotional body. So that is our 3D body, also known as our etheric field. The 3D body is composed of this physical body, this meat suit, our muscles, our flesh, our bone. Our emotional body are our feelings, our emotions. I'm pointing to the heart for a reason, right? And then there's our mental body. This is our mind. This is our thinking brain, the most archaic part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex. This is the science part of what may be explored on this podcast, right? So physical body, emotional body, mental body, that's your 3D field. And throughout this human experience, any and all unprocessed or unexpressed emotions or thoughts become trapped in the soma. They become trapped in our physical body, our mental body, and our emotional body, and then they fester, they become stagnant, and they show up as dis-ease, or they show up as mental or emotional ailments, depression, anxiety. So in the field of somatics, what we're doing is we're attuning to and tapping into not only that 3D field, that etheric field of your physical body, your mental body, and your emotional body, but we're also accessing the 4D body, the fourth dimension, known as the astral body, also known as your soul. So many of us are experiencing suffering and hardship because we are feeling like lost souls. We're not connected to our purpose. We don't have passion in life. We don't know what our dharma is, or our soul's purpose. And so we can't awaken that sacred remembrance of the soul if that 3D body, that physical body, that mental body, that emotional body is all spinning around in stuck, stagnant energy. So we have to do healing modalities and practices to untangle, unleash, to kind of shake up or agitate the 3D etheric field so that we can access the soul. Now, this is where plant medicine is super powerful. There's multiple different access points to access your soul. You can do ayahuasca. You can do psilocybin. We're going to bring in definitely experts to talk about the role that plant medicine has in this healing journey, in your capacity to access your soul. What I learned and what I specialize in is utilizing the body's innate tools of breath, sound, movement, and touch. Let me slow that down again and do breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Ah. In through the nose. Maybe holding it at the top in the pineal gland in that third eye, and then releasing it all out through the root chakra, through the perineum, that space between your testicles and your asshole, your pussy, your taint. Yes, releasing it all out. Ah, all right. Okay, that's a lot, but then that's breath, or you can just breathe like, breathing. You can also just breathe. Okay, so breath, sounding. I mean, you just heard some sounding, but also like, Osho has a beautiful practice. It's kind of gibberish, but like before you go into a meeting, right? Before you go into like a super serious thing, like just open your throat chakra. Just release any and all sounds that want to come through, like without judgment. No one's judging you. Let it out. Okay, so we need to breathe. We need to make sounds. We need to make a lot of sounds. My neighbors, I might get kicked out of my temple for making too many sounds. But pin that where your mind would be going there, because this is why sex is a super potent healing modality and alchemy portal, because we're utilizing our body's innate technology of breath, sound, movement, and touch. All right, so breath, sound, movement, dance, yoga, sport, whatever it is, you got to move the body, right? To release this stuck, stagnant energy from your soma, not just the physical body, but your mental body and your emotional body as well. Another way that we can have movement on the somatic level is through an energetic purge, is through crying, it's through shaking, right? When we're doing somatic practices, we are often releasing a lot of energy. We're having purges. And I know this can be kind of terrifying for people, but I'm here to normalize it. I am here as a tantrika and a somatic intimacy coach to hold all of you in your rawest, most authentic, most vulnerable state. So it's my highest honor and my sacred duty and responsibility to hold you while you are crying, puking, screaming, orgasming. Yes, bring it on. This is my sacred duty and responsibility. And I love curating bold and brave spaces where humans can be all of themselves, because again, we don't have this, my loves, right? We don't have these sacred spaces where we can be all of ourselves. We have to put on the mask and be robots and go to work and say, hey, how was your weekend? And oh my God, it's snowing again. Can you believe it? That's what's keeping us numb and in this cycle of meh, right? We actually have to move the energy through our body so that we can, again, release the programming, the guilt, the shame, the fear, and step into our highest vibrational selves on the soul level. We are being asked, we are being ushered, we are being really awakened. We are here now as a species to awaken to the sacred remembrance of our soul, to do the healing work, to release this old archaic programming. Again, we can honor our ancestors in the process, but that old programming is no longer serving us. It is 2025, my loves. We can't hold on to fear. We can't be operating out of guilt, shame, or fear. We have to learn how to open our hearts and love again. So, breath, sound, movement, and touch. Now, touch is my favorite part. It's my favorite part. And I actually believe, and I hope to have on a guest that will talk about these theories related to COVID, but I actually feel like COVID, I like to call it, was a precursor to what is about to happen. Remember during COVID where people lost their sense of taste and smell? That is a precursor of what is coming. And what is coming is humans are going to lose their capacity to touch. They're going to lose their capacity to feel, right? We are moving into an era where humans are so disconnected. And when you become disconnected from the self, and you become disconnected from other humans, and you become disconnected from Source, from Mama Gaia, you're also disconnected from your senses. So sensual, if you think of me as a sensual woman, yeah. It's because I have cultivated a capacity of sensorial awareness. I'm deeply connected to my senses, right? My sense of taste, my sense of smell. Yes, my sense, I just noticed I'm wearing a hair tie. I don't like that. My sense of touch. I didn't like that hair tie. My sense of touch. Yes. My sense of sight. Most of us are really attuned to our sense of sight, and our sense of hearing. And the way that we can become more attuned to the sense of sound and our capacity to hear is actually by sitting in silence. There's so much noise on this planet, and when there's so much noise, we lose touch with who we really are. We become confused and lost. We become infiltrated by social media, by opinions, by programming. It's literally called television programming because it's programming your brain to believe that you are not good enough, you're not good looking enough, you're not successful enough. So the invitation is to release, to carve out healthy practices, to release your attachment to the programming, right? And to learn how to purify all 9 orifices that you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Think about what you are putting in those orifices and what is being excreted from those orifices, and really attuning to the sacred body temple, recognizing that anything that we put in or on or bring into our field, again, this is what are you listening to? What are you watching? Right? It's all affecting you on the soul level. We're going to be talking about porn on this podcast. I'm going to be bringing on sex workers to help recondition us into understanding that the true form of sex work derives from the priestess lineage. This is the lineage that I have been trained in under the Temple of Isis and Hathor, as well as the Mary Magdalene codes. And so this isn't just to normalize sex and talking about sex to have fun and think that like we're here to bring about arousal. We're actually here in the awakening of the sacred remembrance, to help women connect back to their sacred body temples and understand that pleasure is powerful, that we should prioritize our pleasure, and to understand Eros as that creative energy, that creative life force energy, our capacity to create from our wombs, right? As well as for the masculine to understand the awakening of the sacred remembrance is remembering that back in the day, you were all warriors. You were sent off to war. And when you went to fight those wars, you were protecting your homeland and your families, right? You left the village, you went to fight the battle. And before you could come back to the village, back to your families, you went to the temple. And in this temple, you were visited by the priestess who had studied her entire life to be of service to you. And she healed you through the variety of these healing modalities, right? Through water rituals, through adoration, and even through the connection with her living, breathing oracle through her yoni, through her pussy. She shared that with you as a living, breathing transmission of your connection to God and your connection to Goddess. So to close out here, when we're talking about sacred sexuality, I feel I talked not a lot about science and not a lot about spirituality, but I hope you could feel within the transmission, within me and hearing my life story and my devotion to this work, the authentic expression of what wants to come through me in my call to be of service, to share this embodied wisdom, also known as gnosis, with you because of its power to heal. Because I'm here to help you, whether you're struggling with a mental health ailment, whether you're struggling with physical health issues, whether you feel so ashamed because you're addicted to porn, whatever it is, working with a somatic intimacy coach and understanding these expressions related to sacred sexuality can really help you understand that you are perfect, that you are divine, right? That everything that you're experiencing in life is medicine, that is something to learn from, to help you on your journey of growth and evolution here in this earth school as a human. And are you open to discovering your soul's purpose? Are you excited about understanding your dharma, the actual reason why you are here as a soul to share your medicine, your magic, your time, your talents, right? I think as humans, it's hard for us to think about having talents if we're not like an athlete or a musician or a dancer or a Hollywood actor or actress. It's very easy to look at those types of humans and say, oh, they're stars, they're in their element, they are living their purpose. But if you are working as an accountant or a lawyer or at the checkout line at the grocery store, how are you supposed to feel that you are on point and living a life of passion and purpose? And the invitation, my loves, is for you to feel into your soul's resonance, to access your soul. And hopefully you'll learn throughout the course of this podcast a variety of ways to be able to access your soul's remembrance. You'll be able to learn various healing modalities and techniques that resonate with you, whether it's through food in the physical body or through meditation and mindfulness, or whether it's through somatic practices, or whether it's through meditation, or whether it's through movement and dance, or whether it's through sacred sexuality. My hope for you is that you will learn something here that is going to help you on your journey. Again, I am Josephine Aloha. I am a somatic intimacy coach, tantric practitioner, and embodiment guide. It is such an honor to have you listening to Universal Intimacy, my podcast that explores the intersectionality of science, spirituality, and sexuality, because I truly believe that we are here as humans to up-level and evolve, and we will do so through vulnerability, authenticity, and intimacy. One more thing I want to say about universal intimacy and my creation of this is the arc. And the arc of universal intimacy is to understand that it starts with the self, right? It starts with, how are you intimate with yourself? How can you become more intimate with yourself? And intimacy is not just physical intimacy, and it definitely doesn't mean sex. It means know yourself. Have you done the work to truly understand yourself on a cellular and a soul level? Are you devoted to practices where you get to explore your mind and your emotions and your body? Do you have a therapist? That's a great place to start if you want to understand yourself deeper. Are you reading books? Are you listening to podcasts like this? Yes, I hope so, right? So first and foremost, become intimate with yourself. Understand your preferences, your patterns, and your edges, right? And ways to explore and expand those. Secondly, universal intimacy is about the intimacy that we experience with other humans. So again, it starts with self, rooted in self-love. Then it goes into your connection with other humans, your connection with this beautiful species, no matter what gender you identify as, no matter what your sexual preferences are. I'm truly here for developing that connection between all humans, and cultivating deep intimacy with other humans can come on such a variety of levels: intellectual intimacy, physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, and energetic intimacy. So how can you explore and express and share that with other humans? And then the third piece of universal intimacy is that connection to the earth and the cosmos. So beyond yourself, you're intimate with yourself, you love yourself, you know how to cultivate intimacy with other humans. Again, this is not just your partner, your husband, your wife. This is also your colleagues. This is also your family. This is also your friends. Then are you able to cultivate intimacy with this planet and potentially with the cosmos? And I think for most humans, this is accessed a lot through plant medicine, of this feeling of oneness, this feeling of interconnectivity, this feeling of this porosity of beingness, of like, I am one with the tree and the veins within me are akin to the roots of the tree and I am the tree, right? Maybe you've been there. I experience this on the daily. So my concept of universal intimacy isn't from a substance or a plant medicine or some expanded state. It's just from knowing this and feeling this. And this is why it is truly my honor and sacred responsibility to share this transmission with you, of that we are here for interconnectivity. We are here for the porosity of beingness, feeling into every single pore on your skin, being so wide open to experience this life in your full sensorial awareness, without trauma, without fear. Can you take in all of this love? Can you be here in love, by love, for love? Yes. This is what we're here for. Universal intimacy. I love you and I can't wait to connect with you. Let's get intimate. Maybe I need a drink.
I cannot believe you didn't stop to
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Again, I am Josephine Lauer. I also go by my born name, Josephine, priestess name, Josephina, either or. I love them all because they are all me. You can use either one and you can stay connected with me. The best way to stay informed about my upcoming offerings, my teachings, my retreats, the experiences to work with me one-on-one or to work with me as your coach is to sign up for my newsletter. You can go onto my website now. It is www.curatechicago. That's CUR8 Chicago.com. You can also follow me on Instagram. My handle is Temple of Loha. That's TEMPLEOFLOHA. Loha is actually Sanskrit for iron. And this came to me when I was on my spiritual path. It refers to the iron that is in our shields, the shields that humans keep over their hearts to protect them, as well as iron that shows up in our swords. And so I am here as a priestess and sacred sexuality practitioner and somatic intimacy coach to teach you how to drop that shield and that sword and show up to life heart open, because I firmly believe that when we can shift away from guilt, shame, and fear and into love, we can truly live a life that we love. We can be here for epic, uplifting, ecstatic experiences. All right. Thank you so much again for listening here today. The best ways to stay connected with me are via my website, which is Curate Chicago. That's CUR8 Chicago.com. You can also follow me on Instagram. My handle is at Temple of Loha. That is TEMPLEOFLOHA. Thank you again for listening. Stay tuned. Give us a follow on whatever platform you are on, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and share this podcast with your friends and any humans that you feel would benefit from listening to Universal Intimacy. Thank you. I kind of did.